Hello to the DoubleGDP community. This is Jay here. This particular video update is going to be the customer and marketing update for the for the last sprint with DoubleGDP. A lot of interesting progress over the last sprint, both on the customer side in terms of the development work that we're doing with that one major customer in Zambia, and then on the market side, just in terms of observing and learning about a couple new cities that just continue to give some credence to the market opportunity. So we'll start with the customer side. I think the most important thing to do here is just a little bit of an update in terms of some of the metrics that we're starting to see in terms of the usage of our platform with our primary customer here. Well, most important metric that we track is weekly average users, and we've been observing over the last sprint that some of our weekly average user numbers are down, right? They're down somewhat 2 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, when we tracked that number, it was down about 50% from the early, really kind of like energetic use that we got when we were like really close to launch. Since it's still early, we're still really trying to kind of like figure out the base, like what is the right baseline for that number. But there are a couple of observations there. We have really strong uptick into kind of continued adoption from one of the subsets of users, which is like the security guards, the people who are really using the application at the site or at the gate. And then we also have really good, steady adoption, very continuous adoption with really anybody who is using the digital IDs to access the site. So that includes some administrators, people from our clients' kind of administrative team who go and visit, as well as residents. So all of that set of users is really kind of like holding on, so that some of the user drop off that we're seeing then really has to do with the other set of users. So other members of the kind of client team who have access to the data and the information that we're doing on our platform, but are not kind of like day-to-day using that like single service of gate access. So that's like the sales team and the marketing team who engage with the information around the people who are in the platform, but are not actually coming to the gate on a frequent basis. So we think that that's actually a really big reason why the weekly average user numbers are down for this for at least the first week of this sprint. We don't have the final numbers for this particular week yet. We are doing some really important stuff to increase that specific type of adoption, that kind of like internal administrative team adoption. Talk about that a little more in a second. Second major kind of like activity that we track on the usage of the application has to do with the digital log at the gate itself, and that in this past sprint, that activity was up about 11% in terms of like number of people checking in at the gate. That was up about 11% in the first week of the sprint, but it's down 25% from that week in this past week of the sprint. A lot of the conversations we've had with our client are just like, look, like there are pretty significant rains in Zambia right now, and that's driving a very big change in behavior of who goes out and visits this community. So that's one of the things that we know that is really driving some of that key behavior. We still see the adoption pretty high at that moment of use, right? Like as you get to the gate, people are using the digital log, which is great. And yet, like we're kind of like tracking these trends. These so beyond the weekly average user numbers, it's these activity stats at the gate that are really important for us for several reasons, because they kind of like indicate the increasing value of our platform to all of the internal users on the administrative team. So that's all the folks that I was mentioning in the previous case that some of our adoption seems to be down with. It's the activity at the gate that gives them insight that they didn't have before about who's coming, why they're coming, how frequently they're coming, all that kind of stuff allows them to do better sales, better marketing, and create better services for them. So we're really paying attention to that stat too as an activity metric that helps us kind of guide things forward. One of the things that's really great is that in this past week, Nolan designed a new way to more efficiently create this report on activity at the gate. We're sort of using a Google Sheets version of that report as and some charts around it on a weekly basis to send them to our clients, the sales team, the marketing team, all that kind of stuff, in order to increase some usage with the application. And I think a thing I'd really like to do next is actually like embed some of that report and set of charts itself into the application, so that in order to get the insights, like you got to log in. That should be one of the things that kind of helps us increase adoption going forward. The other most important thing we're doing during this sprint right now to increase user adoption has to do with a enrollment strategy for really the people who are beginning to build on site at the construction and community site of this customer. So we've been working very hand in hand with the head of product at our client site to basically determine what that strategy should be. Collectively, we determined that, like, basically there's a set of kind of like the 100 first people who are going to be kind of like most actively using that construction site, either they're to build or they're traveling through. And that really it should be that 100 folks that that we ought to do two things with. Number one, just auto enroll them in our platform, and number two, send some very targeted communications through the sales and marketing team at our customer too, in order to really get them starting to use the digital ID as they come. We know from the gate activity that actually there's like 4 or 5 times as many people in some weeks who are already already customers of our customer versus kind of the prospectives who are coming through. And so doing the pre-enrollment of those existing folks allows them to have a much more efficient entry to the gate, right? They don't have to like make the call to the head of operations to get approval, all that kind of stuff. So we know we've got the product that they want. We just need to kind of like get the communications out there. So that set of kind of like 100 first building customers is really our next major target for kind of who are the active users of the DoubleGDP platform, in addition to re-engaging that administrative team, that sales and marketing set of folks with the value of some of the analytics and reports. So that's kind of what we're doing as we think about driving forward with our customer. A good week where we don't love some of the data results. We are learning a lot from them, and we've got a bunch of new strategies to play that game forward. On the market side, a really good lunch with the head of the folks over at the Charter Cities Institute earlier this week. Spent some time with him talking about just like what's happening in the space of new and charter cities. He had been in town in San Francisco for the launch, the launch party of a really interesting San Francisco-based startup by the name of Cul du Sac Labs. And Cul du Sac Labs has been creating kind of what they dub as the first car-free neighborhood in all of the U.S. So it's a new community in Tempe, Arizona that basically is aligned with building community and building a community around a lot of the emerging technologies that are happening in life today, especially around things like mobility, right? Like shared vehicles, shared bikes, like all that kind of stuff. So what they've really done is they've created a small community that's car free. We had a long conversation with Mark about that and some other things that are going on with new towns. A few other new town projects also popped onto our radar that were new this week from a market perspective. There's one in Senegal that the rapper Akon is really backing. He's designing the approach to that new community very intentionally around some concepts with crypto. So just a reminder for sort of like who some of these new town founders are and what's most on their mind. And then we also spent some time doing some research with research into a new kind of quote unquote green city project. It's about a $500 billion development project in Rwanda. That one came onto our radar from someone in our network, and spent some time learning about that as well. So that's about the update for DoubleGDP from a customer and market perspective for this last sprint. Hope everybody's doing well.